Minister, today we're discussing the framework and the 5 levels which provide the context in which we hope to lead our lives and live with COVID, and the 3 pillars that underpin them. Now, one overarching area where I think we could improve things is to make every effort we can when we're moving from one level to another to give businesses more notice. You know, as I know, that many businesses have lost heavily because they only get 24 or 36 hours notice. And people feel, look, I'm only back up and running again and the rug is pulled. And it's not so much that the rug is pulled, it's the fact of the speed at which it's pulled and the uncertainty around the financial loss that many people experience. So while I understand COVID moves swiftly, I just would make that general point first. Now, secondly, before I address the framework itself, there's one comment I'd like to make, and it refers to some of the debate here today. There's a lot of debate about what the figures tell us on this second wave of COVID. And while every single death is a tragedy for the individual and the family, nonetheless, the argument is being made that because deaths in August were 14 and September 27, that somehow the second wave is not as deadly, because the ratio of infections compared to the number of deaths is less than it was back in April and May. But of course, Minister, that misses the extremely important point that we're testing far more people now than we did in April and May. So any comparisons we make of figures has to be valid, because otherwise conclusions that flow from them are simply invalid. But the one thing we cannot do, in my opinion, is to lose control of this virus, because we know what happens if we do. I don't know how some people can have forgotten what happened in northern Italy, the scandal of people walking out of care homes in Spain and other countries, and the terror that was New York. You know, this phrase, it hasn't gone away, and it hasn't. And, you know, people really need to be careful about what they are saying and the messages that they are giving out. But there is one thing, many things that have changed, and I think one area where we remain behind the curve is on testing and subsequent tracing. I'm convinced that we can do much better, and that we have to do much better if your 3 pillars are to stand and your framework is to hold. There are new tests on the market, as you know. There is a pilot PCR testing taking place where 10, perhaps even up to 20 people can be tested at a time. And if it comes back positive, obviously, all of those people have to be tested individually. But if it comes back negative, then you've managed to do at least 10 tests in the one go. And given that the positive testing rate is around 2%, it means that that kind of test statistically should work very well. So I think if we can move forward with our testing, upgrade and update our regime, as I said, the pillars of your roadmap will be much more likely to remain in place and give us a fighting chance of living with COVID. I think otherwise, Minister, we will be looking at living at level 2 the odd time, but more likely level 3 to level 4. Now, Minister, you mentioned, or actually Minister Donnelly mentioned the 3 pillars, and I will return to pillar 1 when we are discussing the winter plan later, but I want to concentrate for the few minutes I have on pillar 2. Now, I've said it before and I say it again, Minister, we need to increase the PUP payment to what it was. This is a safety net for so many people, so that they can continue to pay part of their mortgage and simply, Minister, so that their lives don't fall apart. You and I know these people can't work because sectors are closed. We speak to them, we hear from them all the time, and they have no understanding of why that payment has been cut. And it's an act of solidarity, and as I said before, I believe it's a situation that we must pay it because it keeps families and households afloat. And that's what we're asking, for if we are to live with COVID. Minister Donnelly mentioned a cut in VAT rates. You and I come from the border region. We know the importance of lowering the VAT rate in the hospitality sector from 13.5% to 9%. I would ask again that government would consider it. My final point, Minister, is around the Employment Wage Subsidy Scheme. And while it's a good scheme, it absolutely needs to be revised because it's a cliff edge for businesses. If your turnover drops by 30% or more, your business can access these supports. But if it drops by 15%, 20% or even 28%, you get no assistance for employing people. So many businesses have contacted me about this. And as I said, two businesses side by side, one's turnover drops 30%, the other 22%. One of them gets full support, the other gets nothing. So I would ask that a graduated approach is needed. For example, if you were down 10%, that you might get €50 per employee. Between 10 and 20%, €100 per employee, and between 20 and 30%, €150 per employee. And then above that, as it is now, 30% or more, €200 per employee. And that would be a much fairer system for businesses and would significantly improve the workings of this employment scheme. Thank you, Minister.